Okay. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
It's Robyn and Terri.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we would like to introduce someone. We have a very special guest today. And Dr. Peesapati, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much, Robyn, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I am Dr. Peesapati from Bangalore, India, and I advocated for the last 2-3 years, and it's an ongoing process. I started advocacy since I lost my father, but I see many challenges and hurdles in this path. And so I thought maybe if I pitch in and start talking about it, people will definitely understand the seriousness and give it a serious try, which is why I'm here collaborating as much as I can so that I can amplitude my voice.
Yes, we definitely want your voice amplified. And I think we're all seeing in the medical community these days that patient advocacy is starting to play a much bigger role than it has ever before. So we're so glad to have you here, and really eager to learn your story. And you and I talked a little bit a couple weeks ago, but I would just love for the world to know how you got into patient advocacy and how you saw such a great need for it. And it starts with the story of your wonderful father. So go ahead and share a little bit about that with us.
One massive question which always hits me hard, and the most difficult part is I had to play, and I'm still playing two roles. That is, basically, I'm a dentist by profession, so I have to play the role of a doctor, and also I am a rare daughter, a father of a rare disease warrior. So this is a most difficult challenge that I still encounter. My journey began in 2017. So unfortunately, on my 21st birthday, I landed up with a rare diagnosis called as vasculitis. It's actually granulomatosis with polyangiitis. It's a form of rare vasculitis which my father was diagnosed with. Back then, I didn't know about advocacy. I still know nothing about advocacy, is what I strongly believe. But my father survived with it and fought the battle for 2 long years. But unfortunately, in 2019, so from 2017 to 2019, he had to fight the disease. In 2019, I lost my father, which is when the motto of advocacy started. I basically wanted to immortalize my rare father, but on what note, I didn't know, which is when I started Googling, and then I got to know about something called advocacy, and then I started. But I still believe that advocacy is still in its infancy in India, and we still have a very long way to go.
Yeah. Do you feel like with your father being sick for 2 years and you having to watch him go through that, do you feel that if patient advocacy was more of a thing, that he could have got different help, or maybe it would have changed his experience with, because his disease is very rare, if I'm not mistaken, right? So do you think that if you had a network of patient advocates, whether they were in your country or maybe somewhere else in the world that was familiar with his rare disease, do you think that would have helped, the whole process with your family?
I am not very sure if it could have helped in the medical perspective, but on a mental perspective, it could have tremendously helped. Because my father, I still remember the Google search history being how rare is granulomatosis with polyangiitis, life expectancy with GPA. These are the Google search history, matter of content that I got when I used to check his phone or when I used to check the laptop. So he always felt isolated, and not just him, anybody in India would still feel isolated and left out. So nobody likes to be left out like that. So tremendously, it could have helped him mentally to know that he's not the only one going through it. And if I knew back then that there was something called as advocacy or patient groups or something, at least supportive groups, I think he would not have struggled with mental issues.
Yeah.
There's still a stigma in India. So he could have felt a home better, is what I strongly believe.
Yeah.
So what do you view as what you can do as a patient advocate for the patient? Like, what is your vision?
Yeah, this is a very fantastic question. Thank you for asking me about it. So I am focusing on something called as, because I have the privilege of being a doctor as well. and I know the patient's perspective. I want to make sure that the patient perspective is heard enough to the doctors too, because many a times, even when my father complained to us that I'm not feeling fine, or it's just in the head, like I'm not feeling fit, I'm not feeling like I belong, we tend to say that, no, it's just in your head, come on, get along with it. But these are some serious things that we being doctors try to ignore sometimes, or we try to play it passive. So my role is to make sure that not what all patients says is bullshit. There are some things which we have to consider and we have to give value to, and trying to make that communication between the patient and doctor a hassle-free thing. It shouldn't be all in the head always. There's something which has to be taken care of on a real serious note.
I love that. And I'm so sorry for your loss and for what your family went through with your father. But you are so intriguing to me because you have such a rare perspective, because you are a doctor, you are a medical professional, but yet this is so close to your heart. I mean, you watched it and went through it as a caregiver and a family member. So I think your perspective is so valuable for the medical community. And as soon as I heard that part of it, I thought, this needs to be heard. This needs to be heard everywhere, because a lot of times when you're just the medical professional, you're not seeing that side. And, you know, I'm sensitive to that. I understand that, you know, a lot of doctors just don't know because they haven't gone through it themselves. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. And whether it's your dad's rare disease, or like Terri and I were harmed by a medical device, or, you know, people that are harmed by FDA approved drugs, there's so many stories of the desperation in patients going to different doctors, reaching out for answers, and just being told it's all in your head. So I'm so happy that, unfortunately, you know, the situation that happened to your family, but I'm happy that you were able to take that and turn that into you being a better doctor because of it. So I think that's just amazing and invaluable. And Terri, why don't you share with us the story of, we met a surgeon actually who kind of had a similar epiphany when we were in Atlanta. We met somebody, and I remember you were talking to him.
Yeah, so this doctor that we were speaking to, he was explaining his top 3 things that he thought was the most important thing for the patient. And so then he started asking patients, you know, like actually saying, hey, you know, what is the most important thing to you? And the top 3 things for them were totally different than what he expected. So it shows that there's such a communication gap between the doctor and patient relationship, even with a loving, caring doctor that thought he was doing the right thing. So I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have that liaison in between the patient and the doctor, because the middle person can actually hear both sides and then decipher back and forth to help that patient. So what I think you are doing in India is amazing, and it's needed everywhere, not just, you know, in India, but it's just such a great thing to have for all patients.
And we're definitely happy to help you in any way we can to kind of get the word out to your medical community in India. Some of the things that we're doing here in the United States, Terri and I have been to quite a few now medical conferences where they have invited patient advocates into the forum. We have participated on panel discussions. We've participated in private meetings with their leadership teams to just kind of trying to sit down at the same table and get our ideas out there so that we can collaborate together and come up with solutions together. And like Terri just said, it's so amazing because sometimes what the patient wants is so disconnected from what the surgeon thinks they want. And really, unless we're communicating together, we're never going to find out those answers. I was just recently last month at a breast cancer conference, and it was the first time this group had invited patient advocates there. So we are definitely seeing a lot more of this participation in the medical community. And we're definitely happy to, you know, put the word out there so that, you know, if you want to participate in platforms like that, you know, will happily be a word for for advocacy in your world. We just think it's so important, and it really helps not just the patient experience, but the caregiver and the family members experience, whether it's a rare disease or a cancer or a diagnosis that is going to be fatal. We all deserve that support system, and being on the same page is super important. So
tell us what else you are doing in your community to further patient advocacy.
Firstly, I try to get the data because there are many patient forums and there are many patient advocates, but many of them are still, they're not aware of the idea at all, because there are still, many of them in India are still living behind closed doors, and in some families there's lack of support where the rare disease person is considered as a curse and whatnot. So I'm trying to come more in the public, be it on social media or be it offline, regardless of the platform. If I start screaming my story or shouting at my story, people will start thinking, okay, it's not something which has to be hidden, right? If you are rare, you should still consider like it's a blessing, and you should try to come out of it and start speaking about it. It's not just you live behind closed doors and expect your story to be heard everywhere. And only when there's a medical treatment shortage of money, Indians are coming out. That's what I strongly believe, to shout out their story on some fundraising platforms like Keto or Millap, whatsoever, or GoFundMe, something like that, right? So only when there's a medical shortage of money, people are trying to share their story and people are trying to share that link with their friends and family. But I strongly believe if we appear more in public, that itself is an achievement initially. So that is my first move, where I'm trying to appear more in the public to make people feel that they are not the only people facing this. Secondly, I of late authored a book because I'm trying to attack advocacy from all possible sides. Some people who are bookworms, I believe that if they read my story that I've authored, they try to get out some info out there. Because advocacy is not limited just to doctors and patients. There are so many people who are in between. There are some bookworms, they are filmmakers, I'm trying to attack advocacy from all possible sides. So I engage with a lot of youngsters, people who are actually good in painting or any artwork. There's a competition of late every year which is being conducted in United States, I think rare artists. So I have raised a word or given a shout out for that competition, tried to collaborate with youngsters who are non-rare people, so that they participate too. Because actually the rule is that only a participant, rare disease participant, can do it. So instead of me, on my behalf, I made a non-rare person do it, because he'll get involved in the community too. So it's not targeting the rare individuals per se, I'm targeting the community as such. So from the artist perspective, from the book literature perspective, from the medical perspective, I'm trying to spread my wings on all possible platforms and see which works out for me.
I love that. It reminds me of a lot of different ways of advocacy that I've seen, which I think you're absolutely right. I used to be a teacher, and as a teacher, I had students that learned completely different ways. Like you said, some students are bookworms, some students respond better to visual aids and artistic things. And I think what's great about what Terri and I see in our patient community, and I'm starting to see in other communities as well, is there are so many different ways to express your advocacy work. I am part of the FLAT community because as a breast cancer survivor, I was harmed by breast implants and I chose to have them removed. And so I don't have breasts, but there are some amazing women in the FLAT community who are into whether it's drawings and paintings or photography. And I've seen the most amazing artwork and photo shoots of these women in these beautiful, just artistic fashion, showing their flatness and their scars, and or other mastectomy patients showing their scars, because it's like you said, we shouldn't be hidden behind closed doors. Our stories are part of who we are, and we should be able to express them freely. But I love what you said about all the different ways to express it, through art, through photography, through books, through articles, journals, medical research, and just having that well-rounded perspective, I think, is not only inclusive of everybody who wants to participate in advocacy, but I think it takes it so much further. Your reach is so much more because
the awareness, you're spreading all that awareness everywhere. So
yes, it's amazing. So thank you for bringing that up. You just amaze me. I'm just in awe of you, and I'm just proud of you because, it was so sweet to hear you say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know how to be a patient advocate, but you do know how to be a patient advocate, and you are one of the most stellar advocates I've ever met. And I think it just comes naturally for you. So definitely continue doing what you're doing and be a leader in that community, and then just use your platform as both a practitioner and an advocate, because wow, the strength in that alone and the power that you have to reach both, communities is, wow, it's just priceless. So, I know from our discussion a few weeks ago, we talked a lot about your dad, and I know how important he was to you. So I feel it's really a beautiful way for you to honor him. So I know that that probably feels really good to you.
Some lessons I learned through pain and loss. So I want to use my voice to say my story, because maybe there's some other father, rare father, trying to feel included. And I want to say, yes, I'm here to share the story. That way I feel I can help and make my father's way a lot immortal.
I agree.
I feel honestly that with pain and loss, that is when changes actually do happen. It's not until you're uncomfortable and there you see the problem. And then once you see the problem, then you're like, oh, this is what needs to be fixed. So unfortunately, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. And it is very sad that you didn't have that when you were experiencing that to make your father feel better. But the amazing work that you're doing, you're going to provide what you didn't have to so many people just through your experience, through your advocacy work. And I mean, that's kind of why Terri and I do what we do, because I just felt like as a breast cancer survivor, I thought no other breast cancer patient should have to go through what I went through. And yes, I went through it, and that will never change, but I can change it for somebody else. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I think it's amazing. And I also want to tell you that I love what you said about how doctors don't know everything. And coming from a doctor, I love hearing you say that, because you're so genuine to me. And just to have that flexibility in your thought process and in your learning. I mean, that's one of the biggest struggles that we're up against in our fight right now. I mean, there are some doctors that think they know it and this is it, and they will not change. Even though the science has changed, they're not open to the science. And thank goodness Terri and I and our community is so vast and so large that basically when women find a doctor who's still telling them it's in their head, or this is not necessary, you don't need to take your implants out, they know, because there's hundreds of thousands of other women who have no conflict of interest, who are telling their honest story and their experience. And so they do have that support system, and they know that they don't have to listen to those doctors. And the great thing about all of it too is we have seen through our work the really good doctors rise up and shine. And to see really good doctors like yourself and the doctors that we see rising up in our community, and they know better, so they're doing better by their patients. I think they're more compassionate, and they're really listening to the patients and just understanding the fears that we have, the mental part of it, because whether it's a rare disease or a terminal disease or a chronic illness, there is a big mental factor to it. It's very debilitating to be in a constant state of pain all day, or in a constant state of not knowing what your future holds. And for you to be sensitive to that and understand that it's a need and that we can help, instead of being like, oh, it's mental illness, these women are making it up in their head. There's such a big difference in how you look at it. So it's just one of the most beautiful things I've seen in my advocacy is to meet those doctors in person, whether it's at the conventions that Terri and I attend, or just talking to them online, or hearing patients' experience with them. It gives me hope for the future. It gives me faith in humanity, and just knowing that those will be the doctors that rise to the top. And the others, it's supply and demand. if they're not giving the patients what they want, they're just going to sink. And the ones that are doing the right thing will be the shining stars, you know, and setting the example for, like, you were in med school when this happened to you. So what a great example that we have for doctors like you and the doctors that Terri and I know, that they can be an example to these medical students who are just learning about all of this, and how to handle, you know, the mental perspective of an illness or a disease. So again, I think that goes back to just how amazing it is that you get to share in both of those perspectives, which is very rare. So yes, we just appreciate that. And I love hearing you say it because it kind of validates everything that we've been saying all along.
Plus, I think it also, what you're doing as far as the culture shift, what you were talking about, you know, it is changing the culture because, I mean, it's not just here in America, but in India, you have a culture that you are, that people are expected to live a certain way, behave a certain way, and then changing that culture with all that awareness is really the key.
Absolutely.
And I still feel the problem with the culture, because I have to step in and stress upon this point that even today we are expected to live life a certain way, and people are not much open about it. Coming from a conservative family upbringing, I still feel that there needs to be a lot of acceptance, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's in India or everywhere else. They tie what you're doing with your time with that of money. Meaning, supposedly I'm having a conversation with you for an hour or two. The next question which will pop up, not just from my family, but from elsewhere, is if she's advocating, is she a paid advocate? If she is hosting international meetings, what is she going to get from sharing her story? So I think there are certain things, especially knowledge, you cannot trade by money, with money. If you're trying to share your story, it's okay for you not to be paid, because the ultimate agenda here is not to be an earning person by sharing your story, but by creating awareness. So living life under these terms that you have to pay to share your story is still in the background. I think if this change can be brought, I'll be very happy, because not everything runs with money. I agree money is important, but not everything runs with money. Especially if you want to bring a rare change, you have to go a very long way by being extremely strong and then think about money. Because if you're doing really something out of the box and being consistent, not doing here and there and then pausing and then taking a break, again disappearing, instead of doing like that, if you follow a systematic order and then post content regularly, you will definitely have some followers, you can definitely make money. But to reach at that point, you have to do a lot of hard work. Exactly. Initially freely and then get money.
Yeah. I think too, I mean, Terri and I formed GPAC a while ago, and, you know, we might not have like as many followers or as much, you know, content, but what we're doing and the reasons we're doing it, I think speaks volumes, and especially because we don't get paid. So when people question, well, why do you do what you do if you're not getting paid? That speaks volumes, because it's that important to us that we don't expect to get paid. We're not getting paid. And, you know, when people see that and they're trying to weigh their options, you know, people don't come to our advocacy groups to be told what to do. They come for information, and we encourage them to take the information and use it to make informed and educated decisions. So they get certain information from our advocacy groups, and then they go back to their doctor and they get information, different information, typically from their doctor. But the great thing about this whole job that Terri and I do is those patients now are free to make an informed decision. And they're also free to weigh, you know, okay, my plastic surgeon told me this, but my plastic surgeon makes $1 million a year doing this procedure, and breast cancer patients, for one, they're a lifetime customer. If you have breast cancer and you have reconstruction surgery, that surgeon is guaranteed to have at least 10 more, if not 20 or 30 surgeries between revisions, you know, fat transfers, scar revisions, capsular contracture. So you have to weigh that too. You know, the surgeons are getting paid, so they're going to give you information that benefits them. The advocates Terri and I have nothing to gain from this. Like, we are not getting anything out of it. We spend our own free time doing it. And we just want to give information. So I think it's valuable information that patients need to know. And then they're left to their own to make those decisions based on, you know, what they've heard. So, and I think the most important part of advocacy is those of us that are doing it are providing information that patients would not normally get from their doctors. You know, the information that Terri and I share is all free and public information. It's medical studies from medical journals. It's FDA updates and announcements about medical devices or drugs or treatments. And it's all there for everybody, but it's really hard to find that information.
Yeah.
So when you can take it and put it all together in a group or on a website, it's so valuable for patients because, as you know, having gone through it with your father, there's so much out there. How do you even start? And if there's one place that all the information is collected, I mean, it's a great place to start. And then you don't feel alone and you don't feel abandoned and you don't feel like you're being bullied and manipulated by your doctor, you know? So, so I think it's great what you're doing. And we would absolutely love to share any resources that you have on our website. We'll definitely, you know, we'll put a hyperlink in there so that people can click on you and hear your story and see what you're doing in India. Because I think you're going to be a pioneer. I know just from our discussion before, you said it's not really that much accepted in India yet, the patient advocacy part, but I have a really strong feeling that you're going to be a change to that. So how are you being received by other medical professionals when they find out what you're doing? What's the typical response?
Wonderful question. I can give you two different responses that I receive. First thing is positivity. Let me speak about something positive and nice. She's a trendsetter. She's a goalkeeper. She's doing that. Wow, how much time she spends into doing all of these. Because yeah, I do invest a lot of time. If I sit at it, I make sure that I complete it. So, and like I told you, collecting information, it's 100% what you told us, right? Because not everything that the internet gives is true and authentic. So collecting information is a huge task. So I do get some appreciation as well for that. But there are other category of people who say she's doing something as waste of time, attention seeking, she's doing something out of the box. How many years into this is needed to get some success? Can't she do something else instead of this? That response is also there. So we should, like I told you, we should be mentally strong. And most importantly, golden line is not everyone in the world deserves to know what you're doing. Not everyone deserves to understand why you're doing. So if you have a thought process, if you have clarity, if you know what you're doing is not harming anybody, I think that is the reason convincing enough for you to continue doing, because judgments are there everywhere. You just can't be carried away with it, and you can't lose. Because many a times I felt hurt, I felt betrayed by my own family members or anybody, friends, someone close, because it took time for me to convince them that I'm not harming someone, that it's okay to invest some time. Because who, if not me, who will replace the story? Because I do have siblings who are not actively advocating. They do advocate, but not that much like me. So there's no replacement for me. So if not me, then no one else will take up my role. If I have to be in this field, I have to be mentally prepared and strong. Otherwise, you better not advocate. If you're simply carried away by what people say, and if you're giving in to their judgments, better not advocate for the heck of it. Better take it seriously if you want to bring about a change, is what I feel.
Great advice. Great advice.
Great advice.
As a patient advocate, we see both sides of that. We see the appreciation, the excitement, and then we also see the negative side. But that is what we do. We stay focused because it's part of that pain and suffering. You know, like for my example, I was bedridden and I was losing time with my children. So I had a lot of pain. I had a lot of suffering. And I vowed that if I found out that what was making me sick was true, I would never stay quiet. I would become a patient advocate. Well, at that time, I have to be honest, I didn't know what that looked like, but I knew that I was going to do something to make a difference so that other people did not suffer like I did. And that's basically what you're doing. You're trying to make sure you're honoring your father by making sure people do not suffer like he did. And that is what's valuable. What's in your heart is what's valuable. So whatever anyone says, those judgments, they mean nothing, absolutely nothing, because you know what you're doing and your reasons. And that's what we do. Robyn and I, we just stick true to ourselves and we say, okay, this is why we're doing it. That's our why. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep, pushing forward so that other people are aware and that they know they're educated. That's all it is. It's just educating and being there for someone. So I think you're amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Isn't she?
Also, I strongly, sorry. Yeah. Also, I strongly believe that to be a change maker, you do not have to, really impact millions of lives and have thousands of followers on your Instagram. And you do not have to be a social media influencer to be a change maker or to bring about a change. Even if you touched one single life, that's what I strongly believe. If I touch one single life, if I make somebody make them feel that they are not that rare, I consider it a victory, because that is the whole purpose I'm doing it. I do not want to be a social media influencer and have millions of people following me and one Instagram story, immediate reaches is not what I'm aiming for. Because I don't go on quantity, I look for quality, how much of change I'm bringing in that one single person's life. So if I narrow it down to that small a dream, I think it makes it easier to let go of the negative comments and dream big for the small dream.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
Yeah. I resonate with that a lot because Terri knows how I feel about social media and technology, and it's not my thing, admittedly, but it's kind of a necessary tool that we use in our advocacy. And like you said, it really does help when people can land there and find the information. I tend to be a little resistant to that. And that's why I love the part of my job where I do a lot of the research, or I do things behind the scenes, like working with legislators and trying to change policies, which I can see you being passionate about as well. And just, I think when people see what you're doing, it's inspiring to them. And, they might have thought about it too, but sometimes it's hard for people to know where do I do this and how. Like Terri said, she was laying on her couch and she wanted to make a change. She didn't know how. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but she just followed her heart and followed the guidance that she felt led to do. And then it just comes, right? So I think that's great. And I think your heart is in the right place. And I think people are going to see that and see your passion and just kind of jump on board and want to do the same thing, because really it's just making the world a better place, and even if it's just for one person or one family, then it mattered, it made our story worth it. And what a great way to honor your father.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Peesapati, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a lovely discussion, and you are just amazing. You are a trailblazer and a pioneer in advocacy for your country in India, and we are really excited to see all the things that your future holds. And we know that you're just going to make really great things happen in what you're doing.
There's going to be major culture changes. I see it happening just from speaking to you. So thank you for taking the time with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.